Hello, family. Thanks for journeying with me here on another Sunday in the Scriptures. Today's reading actually comes from the Gospel of John. So as you know, we've been in the Gospel of Mark for quite some time now. And we're going to take 5 weeks off from the Gospel of Mark, and we're going to transition into John chapter 6 and take an in-depth look at John 6, otherwise known as the Bread of Life Discourse. So today's reading comes from John chapter 6, verse 1 through 15, and as it reads, Jesus went across the Sea of Galilee. A large crowd followed him, because they saw the signs he was performing on the sick. Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat down with his disciples. The Jewish feast of Passover was near. When Jesus raised his eyes and saw that a large crowd was coming to him, he said to Philip, "Where can we buy enough food for them to eat?" And he said this to test him, because he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 200 days' wages worth of food would not be enough for each of them to have a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, the brother of Simon Peter, said to him, "There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what good are these for so many?" Jesus said, "Have the people recline." Now there was a great deal of grass in that place, so the men reclined, about 5,000 in number. And Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed them to those who were reclining, and also as much of the fish as they wanted. When they had had their fill, he said to his disciples, "Gather the fragments left over, so that nothing will be wasted." So they collected them and filled 12 wicker baskets with fragments from the 5 barley loaves that had been more than they could eat. When the people saw the sign he had done, they said, "This is truly the prophet, the one who has come into the world." Since Jesus knew that they were going to carry him off to make him a king, he withdrew again to the mountain alone. The Gospel of the Lord. So, lengthy reading here from John 6 to kick things off on the Bread of Life Discourse. And this miracle story actually occurs in all 4 Gospels. And here we see in the Gospel of John, he doesn't really use the word miracles. He always uses signs and wonders. And signs are meant to point to another reality. And mainly the point that John is using these signs and wonders to point to is that Jesus is the divine Son of God. And think about when you're driving on a road and you see like an exit sign. You know, that sign is meant to lead you to something else, a greater reality, to lead you to somewhere else. And that's what John means when he says the signs that Jesus was doing. They're meant to point us to a different reality, that Jesus is the Lord. Right? So here we have Jesus going across the Sea of Galilee. A large crowd follows him because they saw the sign. So they're curious. They want to see more. You know, think about if someone today had this reputation for doing a bunch of miracles, people would want to see what's up with that guy. So people are following Jesus, and he goes up the mountain. And to a Jewish reader that sees a prophet going up a mountain at Passover time, their mind would immediately go to Moses, who also fed people miraculous bread in the wilderness, as Jesus does in this reading. So John has given us a clue that Jesus is the new Moses, and to pay attention to him, as the Jewish readers of the first century would have picked up on. So here, he invites Philip to greater faith. I love how Jesus says this. I imagine Jesus saying this with a smile, kind of tongue-in-cheek, where he says to Philip, "Where can we buy enough food to feed all these people?" And Jesus knew what he was going to do, and he also knew that Philip had no clue. So I kind of just picture Jesus kind of playing with him a little bit, like, "Philip, man, there's a lot of people. How are we going to feed all these people?" And then Philip obviously takes him very serious, and he's like, "I don't know, 200 days' wage of food would not be enough." Like 200 days' wage, you know, if the average salary today is $40,000, that's like $22,000 worth of food. There's 5,000 men here, not including women and children. So multiply that. You know, there's a lot of people, not a lot of food. We learned from another gospel account that they're in a deserted place and it's getting late. And that's why they're saying, the apostles are kind of saying, "Hey, Jesus, tell these people to go away so they can go get some food." Jesus says, "You feed them." Right? So Jesus is saying, where are we going to get all this? And Philip's like, "I don't know." And then Andrew says, "Well, there's a boy that has 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, but what good is that?" Right? And this is where it gets interesting, because Jesus gives them instructions. He says, "Have the people recline." which makes no sense, right? What does having the people recline have anything to do with 5,000 men who were hungry, right? And it takes me back to think of the wedding at Cana, where they've run out of wine, and Jesus tells the servants of the wedding to fill up the big stone jars. It's like, fill them up with water. It's like, we don't need water, we need wine. It doesn't make any sense, but Jesus is up to something. And Jesus might be up to something in our life where he's asking us to trust him, and he's asking us to follow him, and he's asking us to be obedient to him. So they tell the people to recline. And there was a great deal of grass in that place. And this brings us back to Psalm 23. He makes me lie down in green pastures. Jesus is the new David, greater than David, making the people lie down in the green pastures. And then Jesus takes the loaves and gives thanks. And the word for gives thanks is Eucharist. That just means thanksgiving. That's what we call our Eucharist. It just means thanksgiving. So Jesus takes the loaves and Eucharist, thanksgiving, give thanks for them. And he multiplies the 2 fish and the 5 loaves, and they eat enough to where they're satisfied, right? And I just think back, just go back one step. Jesus gave them instruction to tell the people to lie down. That was an important part of the miracle. So Jesus always invites his people into the miracle that he's doing. He's always wanting and asking for our participation. And that's a beautiful thing, that the God of the universe would include us in what he wants to do. So it says that they had their fill. They had as much as they wanted. Jesus took, we learn in another gospel that it's a boy that gives his 2 fish and 5 loaves, essentially his family's dinner. He gives them to the apostles, and the apostles present them to Jesus. They didn't have enough, but they took the little they had, they gave it to Jesus, and it was more than enough. Whereas everyone ate and was satisfied, and there was even some left over. So when we think we lack, when we think we don't have enough, let us offer Jesus what we do have, and let us trust him. Let us go to him with expectant faith, believing that he will take the little we offer, the lack that we offer, the not enough that we offer him, and he will make it more than enough that we will be satisfied. Jesus goes on to tell them to collect the fragments left over so that nothing will be wasted. I don't believe that Jesus rejoices in this consumeristic, wasteful culture that we live in. He doesn't want anything to be wasted. And that's a side note. We can do another video on that maybe. But we live in a very wasteful, consumeristic culture. And we as Christ followers can be countercultural and change that. I believe that Jesus also had them pick up the fragments, 12 wicker baskets full. So they all had their own basket full of the leftovers. And I believe Jesus did this for a reason. Because after this, Jesus goes up the mountain to pray, and he sends them back into the boat. And it's nighttime, and they're crossing the Sea of Galilee, and a storm kicks up, and they're terrified. But they have these wicker baskets at their feet. So in the storm, if they had just looked down and saw the miracle from hours before, maybe, just maybe, they wouldn't have been so terrified in the storm. And I think that serves a great lesson for us, is that whatever Jesus has done for us, whatever miracles he's worked in our life, let us cling fast to those. Let us remember those. Let us keep those always in our mind, so that when we go through a trial, when we go through a storm, when we go through a time where we feel like Jesus isn't there, we can pull up that miracle. We can pull up that time that Jesus came through for us. And we can say, he came through for me then. He's going to come through for me now as well. So if the apostles in the storm had just looked down and said, man, we gave him 2 fish and 5 loaves, and he fed 5,000 men plus women and children, and there was enough for us to each have a basket. He's going to guide us now. He didn't just do that a few hours ago, send us into a storm to die. He's going to take care of us. He's going to provide for us. He's the God of miracles. So let us always remember what he's done for us. Let us also remember that he loves us, that he's numbered every hair on our head, that nothing happens to us apart from him, that all things work together for good. And therefore we can trust him. We can rejoice in him. We can give thanks in every circumstance, knowing his love, knowing that he wills our good, knowing that he's working all circumstances in our life together for good. And therefore we don't have to have fear. We don't have to have worry. We don't have to complain. We can just surrender to Jesus and say, Jesus, I trust in you. And here at the end, after Jesus does this great miracle, they want to carry him off and make him king. And what does he do? He withdrew to the mountain alone to be with his Father. So at the end of the day, whether we have the best day of our life, whether we did miracles in the name of Jesus, or whether we had a really hard and trial day, I think the day should always end with us going up the mountain, standing for silence and solitude to be with our Father. As we talked about the last couple weeks, as reporting back to Jesus and letting the Holy Spirit console us and give us instruction and help us on our journey. So please pray for me as I pray for you. May God always bless and protect you.